Cars are like very delicate pets. You gotta feed them, wash them, get them checked up every now and then. It's quite a chore for the owner. And it's no different in Gran Turismo, where you have to do much the same throughout the average playthrough. Oil changes, car washes, and the like. But why? Why do I, as the player, have to partake in all these chores in a game about racing cars fast? I thought I'd answer that question by going through the various maintenance options you have to endure in every mainline Gran Turismo. I found there's actually some really complicated logic behind many of the maintenance mechanics at play, so please join me as we both try to figure out what's even going on under the hood of every car in this series. That means we'll start off, of course, on the OG PlayStation with the first two Gran Turismo games. Series creator Kazunori Yamauchi's vision for a more realistic simcade racing game manifested itself in these two titles mainly through their driving physics, but it also shows in all the activities you do in the simulation mode off track, buying used cars, souping them up with tuning parts and custom wheels, and of course, car washes. In Gran Turismo 1 and 2, you can wash your car for 50 credits. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, there's actually more to the car wash beyond the surface level haha funny cargo wee. It apparently makes your car shinier. I'm not sure for how long exactly you need to drive the car in order to get a noticeable difference, but it's there. And from what I've heard, washing your car will also increase your straight line performance. I tried testing it out with this trusty Honda del Sol and saw a very slight top speed increase on the machine test, but it's a small difference and I'm not sure if I drove it enough to dirty it up. Either way, from what I've heard online, I'd assume this mechanic exists, but yeah, the PS1 Gran Turismo's offerings for car maintenance are pretty bare bones, especially compared to the games to come. And you know what? This is fine actually. GT's simcade aspect comes from how it balances aspects of realistic simulation and arcadey gameplay, and how the PS1 GTs do it brings less focus towards maintaining your car while still keeping it in the background as a mostly cosmetic option. It is nice to have these options available to reinforce the simulation of car ownership, but GT's realism is still primarily shown through the simulation of realistic car physics. And as GT steps into its PS2 era, the next game ahead, we do see more maintenance with the introduction of a certain recurring service shop. Gran Turismo 3 takes what the first two GTs did on the PS1 and brings it to a whole new level of realism. Look at these absolutely beautiful graphics. Please do not think about the fact that this was a quarter of a century ago. And one of Gran Turismo 3's steps towards realism came in the form of an actual car service shop, GT Auto. Feel the excitement that you felt with the original Gran Turismo. With 2 years of rigorously experimenting and working with the technologically advanced PlayStation 2, Polyphony Digital Incorporated. So here's GT Auto and Gran Turismo 3 with the fitting 3 options: car wash, oil change, and wheel shop. The first and last options in that list act like they do in the previous games, the car wash in particular still making your car shinier and slightly affecting aerodynamics. While we're here, I'd like to offer thanks to the various ancient GT Planet posts I found detailing all the inner workings of the game's maintenance mechanics. This video really would not have been possible without them, so if you want to check them out for yourself, all the posts with the relevant information are in the source document in the description. Anyway, let's get started with that second option, the oil change. Introduced alongside GT Auto is the need to change your car's oil occasionally for 250 credits. Your oil starts to get dirty at around 200 kilometers driven and your HP starts to drop linearly in turn. This continues until you reach about 300 kilometers where the oil light on your dash turns on and you reach the max 5% HP reduction. When cars are first acquired, they have dirty oil by default. This is why changing the oil immediately after acquisition offers an HP boost. I'd say that if Polyphony kept it at that, it'd actually work pretty well, a bit more so in comparison to just car washes. From a gameplay standpoint, it provides an incentive for the player to take care of their car while not punishing them too harshly, and from a realism standpoint, it feels much more personal having to care for the car's internals alongside its externals. But you know Polyphony wouldn't just keep it at that. No, there's 2 other hidden mechanics relating to engine performance, engine break-in and engine wear. Let's discuss the former first. So when you purchase a car, it'll have a 3% horsepower reduction from its base HP. This is combined with that earlier 5% dirty oil reduction using this formula. As such, a 1993 Miata with about 137 base horsepower, for example, will only output 126 horsepower straight out of the dealership. Do note that these percentages are compounded. They are not added together into an 8% reduction. Now, suppose you want to get rid of the stock 3% HP reduction. You'll need to break in your engine by driving your purchased car for 300 kilometers. This production will decrease gradually as you drive. After driving this distance and getting an oil change for good measure, our little Miata can finally reach its peak power of 137 horsepower. Side note, this is only for cars purchased from the dealership. Cars won from prizes are broken in by default. Now of course, this is a reflection of actual engine mechanics. In real life, engine break-in involves running the engine to produce small adjustments in the parts' shape and size via wear, settling the piston rings into the engine's cylinder wall and ensuring optimal performance over the engine's lifespan. And it could almost work in Gran Turismo. It may encourage players to use their cars more if they want to get the most out of them in terms of performance, but there's a very slight issue with how it's implemented in game. This mechanic isn't brought up at all. None of the games that have this feature tell you about it. Not even the manuals have any word about breaking in engines. In fact, I didn't even know this was a thing until Raffle Waffle brought it up in a video. Many people learned about actual driving mechanics through Gran Turismo, so why keep this hidden from the player? I know my criticisms are getting a little nitpicky at this point. The difference caused by engine break-in might be insignificant enough to where the average player wouldn't notice, but the second hidden mechanic actually has a more valid issue. Let's talk about engine wear. Starting at 800 kilometers driven, purchased cars will begin to drop off slightly in horsepower, reaching its full 2% HP reduction at 900 kilometers. Prize cars experience the same but 300 kilometers earlier due to being broken in by default. This is a little sudden, but with no used cars, it makes a little more sense in GT3 in particular. But the real kicker, it's also permanent. Yeah, once your car's engine is worn, it's worn for good. I am far more critical of this in comparison to the oil changes and engine break-in before. Obviously, it's realistic and all and only a 2% reduction, but having no way to undo this permanent damage feels too punishing and ultimately detracts from the fun of keeping a car around for a while. However, I do see where this sort of mechanic could assist gameplay rather than hurt it. The engine wear mechanic encourages players to try out different cars throughout a playthrough instead of sticking with one. Plus, the average player probably won't be using one single car that much in a playthrough. So my idea for a compromise, you can have your break-in and engine wear and all that, but do the following. 1. Explain what these are somehow. It doesn't have to be all in your face, it could just be a little tip or something so players know what they're in for. And 2. Have an option to fix permanent engine wear somehow, but still have it come at a hefty credit price to less bluntly encourage players to branch out with their car choices. Alright, that's the end of my whole spiel. In short, while the added maintenance mechanics in GT3 sound great on paper for both gameplay and realism, the way they're implemented ends up being a bit too problematic for the former. There's plenty of work that could be done to keep gameplay fun, but now let's just see how maintenance is in the next mainline Gran Turismo. Welcome to the other mainline GT on the PS2. You know it, you most likely love it, it's Gran Turismo 4. The information you're about to see is sourced from GT Planet user Carlos and their tests on engine wear and oil changes all available on this thread. Massive thanks to them obviously. Because they did a whole slew of testing for the thread, we've got some graphs showing off the effects on certain cars. Things get pretty complicated here, so bear with me. Let's start off by discussing the changes to the oil mechanics in game. Instead of cars having dirty oil upon purchase, in GT4, cars start off at a baseline HP level. Since break-in was removed in this game, you'll stay at this baseline HP for a bit, given that you don't change your oil. If you do let the GT Auto guys chug on some oil, you'll receive a 5% HP boost for around 200 kilometers, beginning to taper off after that until returning to the baseline HP level at 300 kilometers. This means that there are now 3 levels of oil cleanliness. You have the baseline oil level, which is where a car will be immediately after purchase. If you change the oil, you'll move up to the fresh oil level for 200 kilometers of driving with a 5% HP boost active. And if you neglect to change your oil for a while, it'll dirty up and lead to a 5% HP reduction. On the surface, it's essentially identical to how GT3 does it, but shifted up and with a new level of degradation added, but it just kind of feels different when the oil boost adds on to the baseline rather than making up a deficit. Plus, you have the added dirty oil level to make the HP change encompass a wider range and to further disincentivize not changing your oil. Speaking of dirty oil, the mechanics revolving around it have also changed a bit in this game. For one, the power loss occurs later and more gradually, starting at somewhere in the 5,000 kilometer range and taking about 1,900 kilometers to completely dirty, but the exact values are uncertain. Carlos used 300 mile intervals for the test, so I've had to use the 1 kilometer equals 0.63 miles conversion used in game for consistency with the previous entry. It's not exactly accurate, but it's what Polyphony used, so... Furthermore, it appears that operating near peak power influences when the oil begins to degrade. This graph shows 4 tests performed by the VW-W12 Nardo concept on test course while coasting at different RPM levels, 7,000 RPM in green, 8,000 in blue, 8,500 in red, and a run bouncing off the rev limiter in brown. A 5th run on the Nürburgring in yellow was run for a range of rev levels. Focus on the steep curves which show the oil degrading. The green 7,000 RPM run started degrading earliest as it runs closest to the Nardo's peak power. The same goes for the brown rev limiter run as it bounces off the limiter and gets close to the peak again. It took the Nürburgring run the longest to begin falling off. I have a feeling that these choices were made to accommodate and or justify some of the much longer races in GT4 single player, stuff like 1,000 miles and the 24-hour races. Although the changes make things a bit easier, I can excuse them if it means you could partake in all these super long races without spending a good portion of them with the oil light on. But hold on there, bucko, there's something else missing. I wonder what else came back in GT4. Carlos's tests also focused on the power loss caused by permanent engine wear. Let's consult this graph based on their tests with the Nissan R390 at test course. In particular, let's take note of these 2 tested cars on the graph, a regularly oiled car in orange and a completely stock car with no oil changes in blue. You'll notice that both cars start experiencing engine wear at around the same point, around 1,200 kilometers. From there, wear also occurs much more gradually and with a higher 5% HP reduction compared to the 2% reduction from 800 to 900 kilometers in GT3. While we're still suffering the issue of the wear being permanent, with the only way to undo it being to buy a completely new car, this does seem like an improved way to do it. By pushing back the point where the engine begins to wear, it allows the player to get more out of a car before it starts dropping off. What's interesting to note is that changing your oil often actually accelerates engine wear. The regularly oiled car reaches its full reduction much earlier than the stock car. You'd expect regular oiling to keep your engine healthy for longer, but apparently not in GT4. I guess the logic here is that you're running at a higher power for longer, meaning more wear, though it's still a bit unintuitive. But there's another test on the R390 graph, the black R390 with 38,000 kilometers driven. This one's unique because being a used car with plenty of mileage, it's already worn down. Outside of the power losses due to oil changes, the power output of the car remains stable over time. There are actually some interesting options opened up by this that work well with Gran Turismo 4's mechanics. If you want to get a bit more A-spec points for races without messing around with ballast or risking it too much with a less powerful car, you could opt to purchase a used car that's already worn its engine. It also actually provides an incentive for you to buy those rare special deals in the used dealers for cars with 10-kilometer mileages. But once again, the fact that there's still no option to bring an engine back from being worn does hamper things a bit. I'm fine with all these engine wear mechanics, they just need to be options, that's all. So that's all the things in GT4 that returned from the previous entry, well aside from the car wash, which... Yep, that checks out. But we're not done yet. For our next maintenance option, we gotta travel outside of GT Auto and into one of the tuning shops. Tucked all the way in the other section of the shop is the rigidity refresher plan. Over prolonged periods of driving, your car will lose its rigidity, which has an adverse effect on handling. Judging by the mileage where the item becomes purchasable again, deterioration may start at the 500 kilometer mark. While there aren't any posts specifically diving into chassis rigidity, yet some digging around, first result on GT Planet, says that it starts getting bad at around the same mileage as does engine wear, so that's also possible. That's where el plan comes in. For 50,000 credits, you'll refresh the chassis rigidity of your car and revert it back to its original state like nothing ever happened. But it still is a traditional maintenance mechanic, meaning you do have to repurchase it. That being said, why the fuck is this in the tuning shop? I guess it fits in with the increased rigidity upgrade, but otherwise, it's way more of a maintenance thing than an upgrade. Could they just not think of an animation to represent increasing chassis rigidity? Good news though, chassis damage doesn't appear to be permanent. That fixes my main problem with permanent engine wear. Really, the only problem is it being hidden in the tuning shop instead of GT Auto, but players are probably going to be exploring the shop anyway, so it doesn't sting too badly. Plus, it offers a handling based incentive for maintenance. With that covered, we've essentially gone through all of Gran Turismo 4's maintenance options, car washes, oil changes, and chassis refreshes, covering a range of options for the player's car. We're seeing some improvements with all the adjustments made to oil changes and engine wear, and some more tinkering can bring the setup closer to perfection. But as the series makes the jump from its PS2 era, what will car maintenance look like then? We'll see our answer with Gran Turismo 5, my personal first experience with car maintenance in the GT games. Right off the bat, GT Auto gets so many new options: paint your car, paint your wheels, aero kits, racing modifications, you name it. But we'll focus on the 3 from earlier: car washes, oil changes, and chassis rigidity, plus a 4th entirely new option that we'll get to soon. For these 4 options, coupons have been added in this game that allow you to perform service on your car for completely free. You could get these from using GT5's online services like the seasonal events. Hey, remind me again what year it is? The only way to get these specific coupons today is the bonus gift added in Update 2.02 that gives you 10 coupons for each maintenance option. That's how I got mine in 2017. Still got some of them nearly a decade later. These are definitely more of an incentive to get players to go online rather than something intended to complement the existing maintenance offerings. And even then, stuff like car washes and oil changes are so dirt cheap, why would you even use coupons for those? You'll probably only be using the other 2 coupons here. Anyway, let's look at all the maintenance options in detail for now. First up, the car wash. That's crazy. Oil changes also appear to act similarly to Gran Turismo 4. There's the fresh oil HP boost, baseline stock oil, and HP loss due to dirty oil, all occurring at similar times and with the same modifiers as 4. But now, they also show you how much HP you gain by changing the oil right in the menu. In later updates, it also showed the effect it had on your PP. It's true guys, you could grow your PP by drinking oil. Chassis rigidity is finally where it belongs here in GT Auto as well. Look at its beautiful new animation. And at least it's something. But most importantly to this game is the introduction of a brand new maintenance task, the engine overhaul. You know, I've been whining a lot about permanent engine wear and all, so who knows, could this be the option that allows you to fix permanent engine wear? It doesn't fucking fix permanent engine wear. No, the engine overhaul is essentially just another oil change with another 5% reduction, except drawn out to a much longer interval of around every 5,000 kilometers and at a much heftier price, and it sneakily changes your oil too. So like, what even is the point of the engine overhaul then? The previous maintenance tasks all covered different aspects of your car, so engine overhauls are essentially redundant. They cover the same temporary power decreases as oil changes. I wouldn't mind if they added it if it had its unique purpose of covering what we've seen as permanent engine wear. But speaking of, we do get an important change to that mechanic that's definitely worth bringing up. Previously, permanent engine wear occurred at a mileage that wasn't too far-fetched to reach with regular gameplay and the average save, but now the point where it starts has been pushed way back. In GT5, permanent engine wear only starts kicking in at around 15,000 kilometers, and from there, the reduction grows even more gradually until reaching the full 5% at 250,000 kilometers. So now, it's really just a problem for used cars or really dedicated drivers, helping to soften the permanence blow even more. But if you still end up going that far, Polyphony has a solution: car restoration coupons. With the release of the aforementioned Update 2.02, a bonus was given out to anyone purchasing DLC released in October of 2011. It included 5 of these special coupons that could be used on one car, similar to the coupons for GT Auto. I'm not sure if these could also be won from seasonal events, so if any of you played GT5 online back in its heyday, let me know if you got any in the comments. Essentially, what these coupons did is magically reset your car's mileage to 0 and refresh its oil, engine, and chassis to how it was at stock, all while keeping its parts and stats intact. It's a pretty interesting concept, all things considered. I did want to question why it wasn't an option in GT Auto, but it is incredibly powerful and something I think could only be warranted by a special coupon. But I'm still not done yet. You want to know what GT5 brought back from the dead? Engine braking has returned from Gran Turismo 3. It's essentially identical to how it was there: 3% HP reduction until you reach 300 kilometers, all while still being completely undocumented. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And I think that's everything for GT5. Hopefully. I'd say we're taking some more steps in the right direction. Maintenance isn't as unnecessarily punishing as it was previously, but it still isn't perfect. With engine overhauls being redundant and taxing, break-in being a hidden mechanic, and permanent engine wear still mostly permanent, there's still a ways to go before finding the ideal implementation for maintenance mechanics. But with Gran Turismo 5's section complete, that's essentially the end of all the major changes made to Gran Turismo's maintenance mechanics over the series' lifespan. However, there are still minor changes made in the next few entries apart from sport, which didn't include maintenance. That means we'll cover changes made in Gran Turismo 6 and 7. First off, Gran Turismo 6. Let's see what they made for the car wash animations. What? They removed the silly animations that play when you do stuff in GT Auto. Look at the poor GT Auto guys, someone get them some oil to drink. Okay, but for real, they added something here that really helps with the quality of life in GT Auto. There are now actual indicators in the menu that tell you when you need to perform an oil change, rigidity refresh, or engine overhaul. It's such a nice and harmless feature, and I'm glad it exists, but aside from that and the removal of engine braking for the second time, everything is unchanged from Gran Turismo 5. And after that, we jump into the modern era of GT with Gran Turismo 7. This time, we see a change to the oil mechanics. No longer does changing your oil give you an HP boost for 300 kilometers. Now, you start at excellent quality, the highest oil level, before degrading to normal and eventually bad quality. This also means that you no longer have to change oil as much if you want peak performance from your car. It is quite the simplification, but I understand where it comes from in terms of gameplay. It fits in more with the other two performance affecting options, and I'd argue it's more intuitive. Alright, let's beat this dead horse one more time. Permanent engine wear appears in both titles here, but finally, Gran Turismo 7 gives us an actual solution for it within the single player campaign. We've once again got to hop out of GT Auto and into the tuning shop under the Extreme tab. Here, you can purchase a new engine. While it removes all parts added to the engine, it resets permanent engine wear. It's an actual solution. Praise be to Chasm Polyphony, how did they fuck it up this time? You can't get a new engine for every car. The option is mainly available solely for petroleum fueled road cars. Electric cars, VGTs, and tuned cars don't have this option. Even grouped race cars, the main focus of stuff like sport mode and the late game single player events, are denied this option, so it's pretty much SOL if you wear down the engines of those cars. We got so close to an honest to god solution for engine wear being permanent, but no, it's something we're meant to suffer, like it or not. So yeah, now that we've gotten to the latest GT game and its maintenance offerings, I think now's the time to return back to that question at the beginning. Why do we have to perform maintenance on our cars? And the answer is simple, to reinforce the feeling of being a car owner that this series provides, including all the boring long-winded stuff. But that isn't really a sufficient answer, because it's actually a part of a much larger question that's far more personal to Gran Turismo as a game. Is there such a thing as too much realism? There's so much in the background for the developers to create and so much in the foreground that the player is forced to juggle with. At what point do we need to reconsider this effort for realism? That question manifests in what we've seen in all the mechanics making up car maintenance. Everything we've seen has, in some ways, served to further Gran Turismo's title as the real driving simulator. And at the end of the day, its simulator mechanics must be placed in a game meant to be enjoyed by an end user. That means there must be a balance between realistic simulation and fun gameplay. If it's too realistic, it won't be fun. It would be realistic to have to fix mechanical damage accrued on track with credits in GT Auto. In fact, GT6 almost had that mechanic, judging by this line in the manual. But would the average player really want to deal with all this? And if it's too arcadey, it won't be realistic. There needs to be some level of realism to maintain the simulator aspects core to Gran Turismo. GT has been all over the place in terms of this realism balance for car maintenance, but it's got quite a good balance in its core gameplay loop, for the earlier games at least, simulator physics in an arcadey, RPG-inspired single-player campaign. So I wanted to offer my own take on how I would implement maintenance mechanics in an attempt to mimic the balance achieved at this game's core, because I recognize that not only is there a need to be faithful to reality for Gran Turismo, but also that these mechanics could be fun for some players. I would try to focus on the quality of mechanics over pure quantity, so my first order of business would be to simplify maintenance to the surface level mechanics, car washes, oil changes with the freshness boost for those who want it, and chassis rigidity. I think these chosen mechanics provide a good overall variety of parts to be serviced. For the sake of creating a more meaningful choice between getting a car new or used and to encourage the use of other cars over time, I'll keep engine wear and have it fixable by the engine overhaul. Not only would the presence of 2 power loss mechanics rather than 3 make overhauls less redundant, but it helps create that compromise I mentioned in the GT3 section. Speaking of options, it could be nice to have settings for how many maintenance mechanics the player wants in the save. I know this isn't really Gran Turismo-like, the closest you get to this kind of thing is the difficulty adjustment in GT7, but I feel like this would be a good way to accommodate both casuals who only care about the racing and more dedicated players who want the whole 9 yards for maintenance mechanics. And finally, most importantly, keep the goofy animations. Yada yada, GT's quirkiness and all, I just don't want to let these guys starve. You're safe with me, GT Auto workers. Bottoms up.